Good evening, everybody. Thank God for another moment that we've got even to be together, even to share or look into the truth um, together. So I want to thank God for every one of us, everybody joining to this session today. We appreciate God for your life and we thank God for what He's been doing in our individual lives. So now it's another time for us to go through, have the session, our empowerment hour. And tonight I'm standing in for Pastor Tunde because he's not available for just tonight's session. But I trust God that what God already had in mind will still be fulfilled concerning this particular session. Remember, tonight it's about mental empowerment. Okay, so on Wednesdays we have spiritual empowerment, and whereby we look into the scriptures, we learn the principles of the Bible, and we through that find out how we are supposed to live our lives as Christians, so that we can be good examples or ambassadors for Christ. But on Fridays, we have this session between 7 and 8, which we've just started tonight. And that's primarily focused on mental empowerment, whereby what Pastor has been doing is to look into some leadership books, business books, and he would normally summarize the books, and we are able to learn through the experience and the qualification of the various authors, and we're able to learn from their experience, and we use those principles. Because one thing you need to realize is this: when it comes to principles are universally right, as in principles, they operate on a universal level. They are not localized. Okay. So when you follow principles, and one thing as well is the fact that if you are a diligent student, either of the Bible or even of the secular business world, you would have found out that even the principles that are being applied in our world today in the business realm, they are not principles that are necessarily the positive ones, the good ones. They are always entrenched or found a basis in the Word of God. So most of these business books that we've been summarizing, you find that the principles that were upheld in those writings or by the authors, they are things that you can actually trace back to the Word of God. So I know tonight is not spiritual empowerment, it's mental empowerment, but I just want to make that clarification, or to enhance our understanding so that we can at least relate that to our daily or spiritual experience as well. So for everybody joining us on YouTube and Facebook tonight, I want to welcome you to this session of Leadership in You series, Awakening the Leadership in You series. And like I mentioned, if you are just joining, then I'm standing in for Pastor Tunde tonight. And we are going to actually finish off. Remember, he started with us last time on the book titled Hyperfocus. Okay? Hyperfocus, how to be more productive in a world of distraction. How to be more productive in a world of distraction. And the author of the book is Chris Bailey. Chris Bailey is the author of the book, and the book we are summarizing is titled Hyperfocus. And I'm sure he told us briefly about Chris Bailey the last time, so we might not necessarily be going into that. He's a prolific author, and he has written articles that have been published in New York Times and various Wall Street journals and other top-end. So that's about the. And last week, or the last time, last week, Pastor took us through the first part of this book, Hyper Focus. And I just want to quickly summarize so that we can bring ourselves to speed to where we are looking at tonight. Like I mentioned, we should be able to finish this book tonight. It's not a very massive book. So hyperfocus is where you become so engrossed. These are the things we've done last week. And if you want to refresh yourself, you can actually go back to the recording on Facebook or on YouTube so that you can learn more about the things that were covered, because I'm not going to go back to everything that Pastor already talked about last week. No, I'm just going to pick on one or 2 points so I can bring us to speed in terms of where we are and how we can get everything properly understood. We can link our knowledge. We can link our knowledge so that we are able to ensure that we don't miss out on anything based on what this book is about. So, last week it was said that hyperfocus is where you become so engrossed in the work, you enter into a flow state and you become ultra productive. So the state of being hyper productive is actually the state whereby you become extremely productive. You get lots done because your entire mental faculties are tightly centered on a singular task or project at hand. Hyperfocus is highly energizing and even addictive, okay? Because you accomplish an incredible amount in a short period of time. Now, as we go into this study tonight, I just want to mention this because this will link to what we are looking at tonight, which is the second part of this book. You have hyperfocus, you have the other aspect, which is scatter focus, okay? And the aspect of the scatter focus is what tonight's session is mainly focused on. But remember, Pastor laid that foundation last week. I'm sure he touched on the aspect of there's a quadrant whereby you have, and the quadrant is actually similar to what you have when it comes to prioritizing. If you have attended any training on prioritizing before, of course, if you have not, this is why you should come to Abba Bible Leadership Institute. The students there, they've done this, whereby you have the quadrant that has four various segments. You have important, unimportant, urgent, not urgent. And depending on which task that you are trying to accomplish, it will fit into one of these four quadrants. And based on whichever quadrant it fits into, it will determine how much time and effort you should give to that particular assignment at that point. The same principle is actually applicable under this hyperfocus, whereby you have necessary work, unnecessary work, you have distracting work, you have purposeful work. Now, the aspect of hyperfocus is in the quadrant of purposeful work, whereby is attractive and is productive. So you zoom in into that one particular task or project for that moment. Part of the things that Pastor mentioned last week as well as the first part of this is there are two sides to hyperfocus. You have the entry aspect and you have the maintenance aspect. For the entry aspect, there are four things that helps you to get into this mode, to get into this way of thinking. You choose a productive task. That's the first thing you need to do. You eliminate distractions. You bring your focus to bear. And the fourth thing is you keep returning attention. Because the truth is this, let's be honest with ourselves. The way human mind is made, you have to deliberately tame your mind to focus on one thing at a time. Otherwise, the mind, because it has the capacity, it will always wonder about thinking about so many things at a time, thinking of this as you are going through a thought process. Another thing is jumping in. If you are not disciplined and focused, what tends to happen is you abandon the thought pattern that you have been on and you jump into something else. And that would not help you to be productive at the end of the day, because like the saying that master of all trade, but jack of all trade rather, and master of none. So if care is not taken, because the mind has the capacity to think more than one thing at a time, you find out that if you don't engage this kind of principle of being hyper focused, especially to fulfill specific tasks, your mind will just be drifting everywhere. And at the end of the day, you may look back and you think, what have I actually achieved today, or this week, or this month, or the year? But obviously, you are encouraged not to leave the reflection so late that you are not able to buy back the time. So hyperfocus is your brain's most productive mode. I said that. You enter the hyperfocus state by expanding one task or project until it fills your attentional space to the exclusion of all other competing thoughts. You make a single task or project the sole focus of your attention. So that's to enter and to maintain it quickly. It says you stay distraction free, you simplify your environment, you expand attentional space, and you make hyper focus a habit. For you to understand the details of all these things that I've mentioned, I will recommend again, please listen to last week's message or session on this topic. So tonight, like I mentioned to you, we are going to now go to the second side of it. Please bear in mind, hyperfocus is the realm that you get into to achieve more than you would normally have achieved, to get things done, as it were, right? However, there is a counterpart to it whereby the ideas that could actually move your life forward can be birthed. This is when you go into the scatter focus, because during the scatter focus realm, this is when ideas are birthed. Remember, during hyperfocus, you get things done. The ideas that you have birthed, you make it to mature and to begin to produce fruit. But that is not when you literally birth the idea. It's a step before that moment. And this step is when is called scatter focus. So scatter focus can happen deliberately, right? Or as a result of doing nothing at all. You've probably heard this before. There is no vacuum in nature. So if you are not engaged in a meaningful thinking, then what happens is your mind will find something to think about. And more often than not, just like in the natural phenomenon, if you don't deliberately plant certain things in your garden, what happens? The weeds will take over. And how many of us like weeds taking over the state of affairs in our gardens? No. So if you don't deliberately choose what you think about, then your mind will just pick on anything that it can pick on. And more often than not, these are not things that will help your life to move forward. No. So it's a deliberate thing. So it says here, Hyperfocus can happen deliberately as a result of doing nothing. To get into, scatter focus. So scatter focus, to get into scatter focus mode, there are a few things you can try. So just like getting into the hyperfocus mode, you needed 4 things to do. To get into the scatter focus mode as well, there are 4 things that you can try to help you get into this state of mind. And remember, which we will go more in details on that, this scatter focus mode is where you give birth. Creativity happens. If I was just listening to the profile of one guy today, what's his first name? Whatever, Ek. Ek is the second name. Is a 34 or 38-year-old billionaire who is the owner of Spotify. So I was just listening to his profile today because he's obviously making plans to buy my beloved club. So now, whether that's going to materialize or not is not the issue. But what I'm saying is this guy at age 13, he started designing websites. He started doing things in his bedroom. And by 16 or 17, he already has about 15 people in his employment, still from his bedroom. Now, by 19 or thereabout, he sold, because he made an advertisement website. So he sold that on. And by 23, he actually made his first million. He was a millionaire by age 23. But he said with all the lives he was living, with all the access he has to things, he just thought at that point that there must be something else. There must be more to life than this. And this is where I'm going now. So he decided to move out of the big house, the mansion and everything, and all the luxurious cars, luxury cars rather, that he has. And he moved into the woods. Now, a lot of us will be wondering, why will I have so much money and go and live in the woods? He moved into the woods to live in a cabin. And it was during that period that he moved into that secluded place that he got the idea of starting Spotify, music streaming app, which, according to the profile, has over 320 or 350 million subscribers. And that's where, and that company is worth over $40 billion dollars. So he's got about 10% of the shares in the company, and that's why it's worth about $4 billion dollars. But what I'm trying to say is how he got to that point. He had so many things happening around him. He felt, no, he needed space to clear his head to think. So he deliberately did something to get himself the opportunity to have creative thinking. Do we get it now? So that's part of what we are going to be looking at. So scatter focus, which is the aspect we are looking at tonight, is generally pretty easy to get happening. Just let your mind be. That's what I've said earlier on. You free up some or all of your attentional space for random thoughts and ideas to enter your thoughts and take root. So this is a space whereby, even though it looks like, oh, you are allowing just any thought and every thought to come in, but even as they are coming in, you are sifting those thoughts. You are being conscious. You are not, at this stage, you are not picking or honing down to just one thinking way or one pattern to say, this is what I'm going to develop. No. You are giving opportunity for various ingenious ideas to prop up in your mind. Scatter focus. Scatter focus is useful, according to our author, the author of the book that we are summarizing, Chris Bailey. He said scatter focus is useful because scatter focus empowers you to set your intentions and plans for the future, just like the story of the owner of Spotify that I've just told us now. It empowers you to set your intentions and plans for the future with expansive thinking and lots of creative possibilities. So you are not limiting your thinking to only just one thing. You are giving room for every thought and ideas to be generated in your mind. This is the opposite of going through the motions on autopilot. Remember what I said? Even though you are you've opened the door wide, but you are still being conscious of the kind of thoughts that comes in, the kind of thoughts that come in, because you are being particular. You are looking for whichever of these ideas that you need or you can pick up on at a later time, so you can develop that into the next move or the next strategy for your life. So scatter focus is useful. That's what I'm trying to describe. And 3 ways the author mentioned that scatter focus is useful. I've just told us that because it empowers you to set your intentions and plans for the future. The second thing is that scatter focus lets you recharge your batteries. Remember, we mentioned that hyperfocus can be very draining, can be very, energy sapping. And truly, this is something I've been through a few times. In the course of writing my schoolwork, I had a 12,000 words assignment to submit, and I found out that sometimes I will leave my home, come to the church office, so I can have the space to think and to read and to write. But sometimes I find out that it takes me some 2, 3, 4 hours to properly get into the groove, because I'm still searching, I'm still picking this topic, still picking that material, looking at this one, discarding this. So by the time, and that's why normally when I plan to do those kind of readings, I'm not planning a 3-hour, a 4-hour stint. No, I'm planning a 8-hour, 10-hour, 12 hours, because I know the first 3, and moreover, you have 1,001 other things that calls for your attention. So before you fully settle down to be in this hyper focus mode, it takes me hours. But the truth is, when I get into that groove, I can write and write and write. But if I don't hit that level, every other thing will just be calling for your attention here and there. So it can be draining when you are in hyper focus mode. So we are saying when you now switch over to the scatter focus mode, it is an opportunity for you to recharge your batteries, so you can then focus for longer in the future. It builds your mental energy reserve. When you now let your guard down, when I say let your guard down, that is you take your focus away from just one thing to allow your mind to move across, to think of so many other possibilities. That re-energizes you. It's like you are taking your battery, your electric car, to the charging station, so that the battery to keep going can be re-energized. Okay, so that's what scatter focus does for you. And the third usefulness of scatter focus principle is that it fosters creativity. Scatter focus fosters creativity. The writer, Chris Bailey, said, this is the thinking mode where you can connect odd ideas and create new ones. You can connect ideas that seems as if, what's the meaning of this? Ideas that at the initial stage you are wondering, this doesn't really make sense. It is in this kind of mode of scatter focus that creativity is birthed. You can connect old ideas and create new ones. Scatter focus lets you piece together new solutions to old problems. When you have been in a situation or in a particular environment for so long, you get accustomed and used to the way things are in that place that even the problem that's been there, you don't tend to see them as problems again, because you have defaulted. Your mindset has been readjusted to accommodate those things. And that's why, like in workplaces, when someone new is just joining an organization, that is an opportunity for the company or the organization to seek improvement opportunities. Why? Because the new person that is just joining the group or the organization is coming fresh, has not had his or her views colored with the way things are, the culture of that environment. So they are able to say things, even though it may sound odd initially, but if you look into those things more critically, you are able to see that, wow, so we can actually do this thing in a different way. We can approach this. So scatter focus is what helps you to have creative solution to old problems. Creative solutions to old problems. The more creative a solution you need, the more time you should try and deliberately deploy scatter focus style thinking. The more creative solution you need, the more time you should try and deliberately deploy scatter focus style thinking. So if you have issues at hand that seems to defile every solution you've been trying to apply to them, then you need to switch over, because you've probably been focusing the solution on one way, just what you have always known. Like a man of God said, you say is that you can't continue to do something the same way every time and you expect a different result. No, it's not going to happen. If you're going to get a different result, then you should give yourself the opportunity to think outside the box, to think beyond how you would normally think. So I'm reading from the summary of the book now. It says scatter focus tends to get a bad reputation and be described as pointless, but the fact is humans are the only species on the planet who can think about things which are not immediately in front of us. Well, I believe that's powerful. We have the ability to think about things that are not immediately in front of us. The author says this gives us the capacity to plan for the future, learn from the past, and get creative sparks, which can lead to breakthrough ideas and inventions. Scatter focus enable you to live intentionally rather than merely reactively. Wow. That is really, really interesting. So when you engage in scatter focused style of thinking, it helps you, it gives you the capacity to plan for the future, learn from your past, and get creative sparks, which can lead to breakthrough ideas and inventions. So that means scatter focus gives you the opportunity to traverse the three time zones: the past, the present, and the future within the same continuum or spectrum. Wow, that is really, really empowering to know that. So this helps you to live intentionally rather than merely reactively. You are not meant to live based on just reacting and reacting and reacting alone. No, you are made in God's image. And part of what that does or that means for you is that you are able to take initiative. You are able to imagine things creatively, even things that do not currently exist. You can think them through and put in place the right mechanism to birth that dream. Chris Bailey wrote in the book, he said, study shows quite definitively that when your mind wanders, you will think about the past about 24% of the time, the challenges of the present 28% of the time, and the future for around 48% of your time. Wow. So a research has actually been done to show that when you let your mind wander 24% of the time, you are thinking of what has happened in your past. 28% of the time, you are thinking of the present, and the larger chunk, you are thinking about your future, which is 48%. You can see the benefit of actually letting your mind truly wander in the space of thinking. So Chris Bailey says, every moment of our life is like a choose your own adventure story, continually offering different options that allow us to define our future path. Scatter focus lets us better imagine this path. Should we talk to the good-looking person sitting alone across the coffee shop? Should we accept that job offer? How should we order our eggs? This mode also enables us to better weigh the consequences of each decision and path. In thinking about the future, we flick off autopilot mode and have the space to step back and consider how we want to act before our habits and routines make the decisions for us. I think that's quite a strong statement as well, because when you engage in this scatter thinking mode, you are considering the opportunities. You are not just consumed or focused on only the opportunities. You are letting your mind critique your own thinking to say, okay, yes, everything looks all right, but what if? This is the moment whereby you engage your what if. You are able to look at your possible blind spots that you can have. These are things other people in your life should be able to do for you if you are in the company of the right people. But scatter focus helps you to get into that realm as well. That does not exclude the fact that you need the right set of people around your life. But what we are saying is with scatter focus, you are able to actually take a step into that domain as well, whereby you let your mind wander of the opportunities. What if? The only thing I will say, which is the reality, is you don't now, because you are considering the what ifs, you don't let the fear of the unknown stop you from taking the step you are supposed to take. That will always limit you. No, that's not what we are talking about. So scatter focus comes in 3 different flavors or modes. One, you have the capture mode. This is according to the author of the book we are summarizing, Chris Bailey. So he says the 3 flavors of mode are capture mode, where you just let your mind wander naturally. Capture, remember the same principle with your camera when you capture. So you let your mind wander naturally and you take note of any good ideas which come along. Try and schedule 1 or 2 15-minute sessions each week where you can just let your mind wander and see what ideas bubble to the surface. You might be pleasantly surprised. I know one of the challenges a lot of people will have with this is a lot of us, we are afraid of silence, because when you want to engage in this kind of scatter mode, remember what we said even during the hyper focus, to maintain it, that you need to simplify your environment. Part of simplifying your environment is to take away anything that distracts you or can distract you. So when you are in scatter focus mode as well, it says let your mind wander. But for you to do that and to be effective, you are not going to do that in a noisy environment. You will not need to switch on the TV, listen to CNN, listen to sports going on at the same time you are trying to do scatter focus. No, it says schedule a 15-minute session each week. And I'm sure in one of the previous books that we have read as well, there was this point made about create a thinking time. These are the things highly successful people do. that we need to begin to engage with as well. You know the saying that if wishes are horses, even beggars we are. It's not just about wishful thinking now. There are practical steps to take in order to make your dream a reality. God will always do his own side of things, but there are aspects that you and I we need to take care as well. So the author Chris Bailey said scatter focus comes in 3 different flavors. So I've talked about the capture mode. The second one is problem crunching mode. Problem crunching mode is where you keep a problem loosely in mind and then let your thoughts encircle the problem and look at it from different angles. You mentally turn your problem over and explore it from different angles. In fact, this second principle is actually linked to a principle in my field of practice when it comes to continuous improvement, whereby you have what we call a fishbone diagram. Fishbone diagram is you have a problem statement and you have like you have the skeleton of the fishbone, various strands springing out. So when you have the problem statement, then you look at it from different angle, from different segments. So all those different spikes going out, that's where the ideology got its name. And that is what this author, Chris Bailey, is describing within the business or leadership context as well. Problem crunching mode. You let the problem keep the problem loosely in your mind, but you turn it over and explore it from different angles. And the third one, quickly, the third mode, it's about the habitual mode. Habitual mode is where you engage in a simple task which doesn't require much brain power, and you capture the other ideas which bubble up to the surface while you are doing that. So when it comes to habitual mode, this mode is quite fun, especially when you are doing something you like. You stay alert for any creative insight which this style of thinking yields. Habitual mode tends to be the most powerful kind of scatter focus thinking. So out of the three that's been described, the author is saying out of capture mode, problem crunching mode, and habitual mode, is recommending that habitual mode is the most powerful kind of scatter focus thinking. That shouldn't be a surprise, as many people have found they get their best ideas when they are exercising or taking a shower. How many times have you heard, even I'm sure our pastor has actually told us of specific instructions that God has given him that has come in unusual locations? Praise God. So it's really interesting that life should not and is not always so stringent and so strict and so ordered, and everything has to follow the strictest of principles, or timeline. No. There are moments that in the place. That's why I'm not sure I want to go so much into this, but the thing is, children, you let them explore, because in the process of exploring, that is where their creativity is enhanced. But I know what I didn't want to go into is how much of this exploring or not, and this has some cultural nuances and all the rest. But I'll leave that for now. So habitual scatter focus can generate some highly creative ideas, and it's worth experimenting with. The paradox is the more you hyperfocus, the more you will need scatter focus, and the better you become at it. Remember, it's like two sides to a coin now. You need hyperfocus to get the idea to maturity and to fruition, but to generate the idea in the first place or other ideas, that's where you need scatter focus. So the more you are churning out in terms of fulfilling those ideas that you are generating, then you need the production line, which is what scatter focus enables you to do. So the more hyper focus you do, the more of scatter focus you require. So hyper focus will expand your attentional space, improve your memory, and make you more aware of what you are thinking about. All three of those factors are also helpful in getting more out of scatter focus. You'll be able to generate more fresh ideas and remember more of what comes up. Chris Bailey says, in many ways, hyperfocus and scatterfocus couldn't be more different. Hyperfocus is the focusing on one thing. Scatterfocus is about focusing on nothing in particular. With hyperfocus, you direct your attention outward. With scatterfocus, you direct your attention inward. One is about attention, the other is about inattention. On a neurological level, the two mental modes are even anti-correlated. When the brain network that supports scatter focus is activated, activation activation in your hyperfocus network plummets. That one goes down, okay? And vice versa. So you can't hyperfocus and scatter focus at the same time. That's what the author is trying to establish. Okay, you can't do both. Like there's a saying in my language that you can't whistle and sing at the same time. So as in you sing verbally. It's not like you can't use your whistling to sing. No, no, no. But you can't be whistling and be singing, sounding out words at the same time. You can go and try that, and if you crack that, then let's know. We can record you. Maybe you go into the Guinness Book of Record for achieving the feat. But what the author, Chris Bailey, is saying to us is you can't hyperfocus and scatterfocus. You do them alternately. But the more of one you do, then the more of the other will be required. All that said, the two modes of your brain reinforce each other, especially as you enter into each mode with intention. This makes it important to deliberately practice both modes. J.R.R. Tolkien says, not all those who wander are lost. I'll say that again. J.R.R. Tolkien, he said, not all those who wander are lost. So, because when you let your mind wander, this is where what? This is where you have creative ideas that can be generated. So, how do you hyperfocus? How do you hyperfocus? So, you hyperfocus by doing four things. Scatter focus, I meant to say, I beg your pardon. How to scatter focus. Scatter focus can happen deliberately or as a result of doing nothing, which we said earlier on. To get into scatter focus mode, there are a few things that you can try. Okay, so the four things that you need to be aware of when you want to get into this scatter focus mode is you need to recharge your attention. You need to try and connect the dots, okay? Then cluster your dots. And the fourth thing is to form a scatter focus habit. Form a scatter focus habit. So quickly going through these four aspects so we can round off tonight. So the author, Chris Bailey, he says to get into scatter focus mode, recharge your attention. Meaning, step back from your work and take a break. Get out of the office and take a walk in fresh air and have a quick siesta. This is a principle I've practiced this, whereby, and truly, it's a common saying anyway, that you need a fresh air. You have been working, you've been, bombarded with the emails, with the reports, with the project, with attending to various clients and all the rest. At some point, you just feel, you know what, I'm not being productive in this mode at this point. I need to take a break, just take a walk, just get some fresh air. This is what scatter focus is about, to recharge your attention, to think expansively and outside the square. You have to build some downtime into your schedule. There are times when taking a complete break can end up being the most productive thing you can do. I have my own personal experience is more of, especially the mental block, whereby you're trying to write. You've read, you've written. Sometimes it feels like you've just hit a brick wall. You just want to leave everything at that point and do something else, do something different, do something totally unrelated to that task at hand. And you know what? Sometimes in the process of actually doing something that is totally unrelated to what you are struggling to accomplish, an idea, something that's been in your mind or that you have overlooked, just drops in your mind. And that becomes the solution to the reason you are struggling to accomplish what you needed to accomplish. So try connecting the dots. That's the second thing, with a dot being one piece of information. So when you are in this scatter focus mode, how you do it is all the various thoughts and ideas and information that are coming to your mind, try and be deliberate in connecting the dots. The essence of scatter focus is you try and make some unique connections between ideas which have never been linked together before. Creative insights arise when you cast about for novel or random connections. You take something from one sphere and transpose it to a completely different application. These are the steps you need to take uh, in order to engage in scatter focus. The third one is that you need to cluster your various dots into information. Pull everything together. Pull everything, the dots, the information that are being generated in your mind. Pull everything together. Okay, so to intentionally consume more quality information, then you need to do certain things. Maybe you read and study topics you are passionate about, or learn about things you care about, or you defend your attention and choose not to watch TV massively. If you go through the book by Chris Bailey, you would find out that either hyper focus or scatter focus, they don't just happen to the productive end just on their own. You take specific actions to you are, even when it seems you are not thinking, you let your mind loose. It's still a choice you have to make to start that process. Okay, so the fourth one, how to scatter focus, is that you need to form a scatter focus habit. Let your mind rest and wander periodically. That's the aspect that it talks about. Create a time, a 10-15 minutes, a 10 to 15 minutes scatter focus breaks within your day or your week or your whenever you can schedule it in. Have it planned. Have it planned. To fail to plan is to plan to fail. That's what has been said. So, and the good thing is, when it comes to this scatter focus experience or practicing scatter focus, you find out that sometimes some locations or situations that you choose enhances how effective you are with even either hyper focus or scatter focus. Sometimes a walk along the path of a stream, or sitting watching nature, or just going to a quiet place or doing something. Some people, for them, is actually maybe in the place of cooking. When they're in the kitchen, that's when some unusual ideas begin to flood their mind. You need to understand, where is there a physical location or certain scenarios that enhances your ability to, engage with either hyperfocus or scatter focus. Because when you are able to identify what it is that triggers or enables you, then you'll be deliberate in what you choose, in what you do, so that your life, the ultimate thing, remember, the title of this book is what? Is hyper focus, which is how to be more productive in a world of distraction. So at the end of the day, what we are looking at from this book is about everything you need to do that will help you to be more productive. You can't do anything about the fact that there are distractions around you. It is outside of your control to say, oh, because there are noises in the world, so I will sit down and do nothing. No, no, no. You have to make a choice to do things that, in spite of the distractions, your life is not arrested. It's not just about daydreaming. Daydreaming doesn't get you the results you want. It is what you do with those daydreams that will take you from where you are to where, in fact, beyond where you could ever think or imagine. So scatter focus and hyper focus seems like complete opposite, but the reality is you will be far more productive if you use both of them in tandem. So as I round up tonight, let me just read this quote from Chris Bailey and one from Albert Einstein. So Chris Bailey says, when we focus, we consume and collect dots. When we scatter our attention, we connect dots. You see, hyper focus, you collect. Scatter focus, you connect. Okay? Hyper focus allows us to remember more, which leads to more valuable connections made in scatter focus mode. Scatter focus lets us recharge, which in turn provides more energy to hyper focus. The insights we unearth in scatter focus help us to work smarter later. In these ways and others, deliberately managing our attention is a practice with compounding benefit. Deliberate practicing. Please don't forget those two words. And Albert Einstein said, I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious. If Albert Einstein says he doesn't have special talent, then you and I, we need to check ourselves. You need to go and read more about him. But what he's trying to say is, look, even with the talent, there's a book that I read some time ago, and I think I gave my son to read. Whether he finishes reading it or not, that's a different question. But the book says talent alone is not enough. So that's what Albert Einstein is alluding to here. Look, he might have talent, but there is the backup of passion to make the talent to work. So that is the book, Hyperfocus, written by Chris Bailey. And we have looked at this book over the course of the 2 sessions. We've looked at the aspect of the hyperfocus and the counterpart, which is scatter focus, and that you need both to work in tandem, because as one expends your mental energy, the other recharges your mental energy. One supplies you with various ideas that you can generate and look into, and the other one helps you to pick out specific ones out of these lots of ideas in order to mature it and bring it into fruition. In fact, I told you when we started, all these principles, they are still entrenched in the scriptures. This Bible says that it's only a fool that does not roast what he gets from hunting. So what's the point that you generate so much ideas, but you don't make deliberate step to ensure that you bring those ideas to fruition? So thank you for joining me tonight. As we have come to the end of this broadcast tonight, and that's the end for this book, Hyperfocus. As pastor, we always encourage you can get the book so that you can read more about it. The book is written by Chris Bailey. I appreciate your support. So for everyone that's joined on Facebook or YouTube, we thank God for you. Please join us on Sunday when we have our church service. The church is opened. We have the social distancing measures in place. So we encourage you to come if you are around in the UK. Otherwise, the services will still be streamed online through these two media platforms. Thank you for joining us tonight. I pray that the knowledge you have acquired from this series, and you are still acquiring, that you will be doers, not just hearers. Have a very fruitful week. It's a special weekend in the UK. It's a long weekend, bank holiday Monday. So have a very pleasant one. God be with you. This hand of the Lord continue to strengthen and uphold you and all that are yours. Thank you. God bless you. Bye.